to the latest edition of our Thought Leadership series. If you have questions, please submit them via the Q&A button at the bottom or top of your screen. We won't have time to answer them during the session, but we will post answers on our website in the coming days. I am joined today by Olaya Garcia-Lanca, Director, Institutional Development and Engagement at Esade, a private global higher education institution comprised of a business school, a law school, and executive education program in Barcelona, Spain. Olaya joined Esade as a faculty member after a distinguished career as a scientist and a marketing executive in the pharmaceutical industry. For many years, she ran Esade's MBA program, and 3 years ago, she was asked to assume her current position as the first person to oversee fundraising and engagement at Esade. Thank you for being here, Olaya.
Thank you, Suzanne. An honor to be here with you.
And thank you all of you for joining us for this rescheduled date due to my unexpected illness. Olaya, can you begin by telling us why Esade has decided to build a fundraising program now? What changed 3 years ago?
Well, Esade started with the fundraising initiatives actually before this last 3 years, around 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was a trial in a moment where the school was getting the internationalization strategy in place. And they started, and it was a good attempt to start, supported by a board member, and it was okay. But then it got a little bit of momentum, and then the last 8 years, it went a little bit down for many reasons, mainly because, as many of you know, Southern Europe countries in Southern Europe are not very philanthropic. The culture of philanthropy is very much related to sometimes catastrophes relief or church-related activities or some medical causes, obviously, like COVID now is a great example, but not so much about giving for
to universities in particular.
Education or other cultural causes, that's not so much integrated in our culture.
Yeah. So
3 years ago, we had a new CEO, a new Director General. He's been living for 25 years in the United States, although he's a Spaniard and a former faculty member of Esade. And he changed completely the executive board of the institutions. And he decided to innovate in programs in academics in many different degrees and aspects. And also getting into speed with areas like fundraising and engagement, where many other higher education business schools at our level, in terms of rankings and accreditations, and so we're already working, and we were not there yet. So yes, that's how we started. And then because I've been in the school for so many years, and then he asked me about that.
Yeah. So that's it. You bring up a really interesting point, Olaya, that as schools like Esade, which are academically very highly ranked, think about their peers. They're not thinking about what's happening in fundraising for universities in Spain. They're thinking about what are other highly academically ranked business schools, law schools globally do. Yeah, and that seems to be one of the motivators as we talk to.
Sure. So it is very interesting because we compare each other with our peers in terms of publications, ranking positions, so on. But now, recently, Southern European schools, because UK, as you know, is Anglo-Saxon, is more US mirroring, but continental Europe, we're now starting to take that as another parameter of success of the future of the school. And we're getting to take it as seriously, as strategically, as importantly as the Anglo-Saxon educational arena has been doing it for hundreds of years already.
Yeah, really interesting. And so one of the things we see in Spain and Southern Europe is that philanthropic support for a business school in particular often starts with corporate support. So what steps have you and your team taken to build relationships and begin to ask individuals for their support as the next step?
Yes, well, I don't know if the audience probably they don't know, but when my CEO asked me to take this role and get this responsibility, the condition that I said that I put on the table is fine, I'll accept it, but I need professional help. And so my board pointed out to Suzanne, to GGNA. So I started, thanks to GGNA, with we did everything, operating plan, communication plan, the whole package. And there we realized that our mix, the mix as you were commenting before, it's completely the opposite of a mature fundraising program. In our case, when I inherited the department, and still today, we haven't changed much the percentages, 90% of the donations come from corporate world, and 10% from alumni. So our to-do, still in the to-do list, and we're fighting, and it's harder than what I expected, is to build the annual fund, the major donor, and all that individual segment.
Yeah.
Corporate goes really well for two reasons. First, because we're a business school that was created. The birth of the school was a combination between the business society here in Catalonia, asking for help to the Jesuits, trying to emulate the American business school model in the 50s. So our links with the corporate world is very strong. And we have the second biggest alumni population in Europe after HEC. So we have 67,000 alumni, which they've never been asked to give.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
In a formal way, since we launched two years ago, the first campaign. So there's no culture in the alumni, they're engaged, there's no culture in giving. So our objectives and goal is to try through campaigns and communication and engagement and our case for support that we developed with you guys to get that mindset of give back to the school, because corporate understands very well. Whether it's
they have a vested self-interest, right? Esade being a top business school helps them with their pipeline of talent.
Pipeline of talent, applied research, conferences, all the aspects that us as a university business school we can give, they understand very well. Individuals is like, what? You ask what? So that is, and it is really interesting because you have to really elaborate. So the narrative had to be created. And the different uses and needs have to be well explained. And it's going, but it's going slowly because,
that's such a really important point you just made. I think that part of because it hasn't been part of the culture and the history to have private individual support for universities and throughout much of Europe, it has to start with like, what is the financial mix, right? What might philanthropy help us accomplish that we can't accomplish without it? And you're right, there is even we talk about this in North America with public universities, there is a little bit of, isn't this already paid for by the government or someone else? But there is an understanding, particularly among not very highly ranked public universities, that fundraising is part of it, as part of the financial mix. So I think one of the things that your team has done well is to start to explain, and really as a through line in every communication, that philanthropy is part of our financial mix, and it is necessary to achieving some of these things that we've incorporated in this vision.
Absolutely.
But that's got to be relentless communication around that.
I even say it's communication, but at this point, we are doing pedagogy. We're really, training and getting the message across. Is more than, because if we only do the communication at this point, because of the lack of the culture, it just goes through.
Right.
We're going even deeper. So
Yeah, no, that's an important. Caldo, the head of Esade, was so smart to pick a marketing person as the head of fundraising. So one of the things that you and I and your team have talked about a lot is the fact that one of the most challenging parts of starting a program is figuring out how to set goals and working with university leaders to make sure that there is a shared, ambitious but realistic expectation about what could be accomplished and in what time frame. So can you share a little bit about the approach to goal setting, and also what have you done? Because I think you've done a good job of educating not just the CEO, but your partners across the university so that everybody understands what realistic success looks like.
Yeah. I remember very well, reaching desperately to Susanne and say, help, because what happens when you encounter a very sophisticated group of individuals, like the ones we have in the board, or my peer colleagues, whether they're faculty members or executives or so, if there is not an understanding, and I mean an understanding in terms of being familiar and knowing the drivers, the parameters, the KPIs of fundraising, there's a very natural tendency to think that you can ask numbers as if it's a business related line, right? So to make them understand that we're not selling anything, and philanthropy doesn't have that transactional thing, and that is very different, and you need time and to build. So in order, when we set the KPIs, remember, the expectations of the board, they were setting KPIs as if it was just a normal revenue stream from any.
Right. And as if you had a history of doing.
Right. If you have a history, and if it's a yearly thing, like time doesn't, it's on an academic yearly basis. What does it mean cultivation? What does it mean that you need X years to receive something? So what Susanne really, I think the most, besides really getting the instruments and really getting the knowledge in myself and my team and pointing into the right knowledge, the top knowledge that is out there in fundraising and so on. So that is, the training us to be good fundraisers. For me, the most important help that she gave me and my team, it's really that part that she just pointed out, is the setting expectations to the board of what is a realistic goal of fundraising, analyzing very well justified the point that we were starting, so where we are now, what resources we have now, what type of resources we have, both in terms of team, both in terms of current donors, both in terms of pipeline. So a really 360 analysis of our market, if I can talk on business language, and the projections. So how in the next 8 years, projection wise, can be, and also she met with the board members and so train them about fundraising. Fundraising has percentages of growth like any other industry.
Right, exactly.
Remember, you cannot say, okay, 1 year I won 10, and the next year I won 30, and the next year I won 100, because growth in fundraising doesn't work that way. And so that was super important. That was crucial. The board accepted it. Now they know the percentage of growth of higher education in terms of this and that. And that was part of a lot of my energy. First month.
And I love what you just said, Olaya, because I think it really speaks to really understanding the board of a business school. What are the ways they're going to think about this? What is the data that will be credible, given the fact that you don't have a lot of your own institutional history to point to? And so Olaya and I also spent some time thinking about what's a realistic aspirational program, right? So if we're looking at the top business schools in the world, looking at what the University of Chicago is doing in fundraising at their business school is not a realistic barometer.
Or Harvard, they always go for Harvard.
Yeah, Harvard. Exactly. What's Harvard doing? And then, so for us to look at, a program like INSEAD, which is, had a very successful campaign, but what has that trajectory look like? And And I think the nice thing too is that some of these peers were super forthcoming about what it has taken at their institution, which was allowed you and your team to again show we did the research. Here, here are the numbers, here's the plan behind it. And this is why we think this is a realistic, set of metrics to hold us to. But that does that, you're right, it takes a lot of work. It takes thinking about the audience, because this is all new. Things like admissions, they've got decades of experience thinking about what does this successful admissions program look like.
I have to say that after 2.5 years,
Yeah,
the board, in terms of understanding, it's outstanding. The understanding of it.
That's great.
They talk philanthropy language. When I present, they're always looking for ways to help, so it worked.
That's
it worked very well in that now they are understanding and they have the language. They actually say, how can we help more? Because we were able, with you and I and the team, we're able to convey the complexity of what it is to set up a fundraising program with the goals that they were expecting, and with the resources that the school has available for this particular effort.
I remember talking about that with you a lot, that for the first year in particular, I think both of us talking about, wow, this is a lot of talking to internal audiences. Now, of course, the board members are donors, so they're kind of internal and external. But, the times, and to your point, it's really well spent. But I think sometimes, and, especially, a CEO might think, oh, okay, well, we've hired you, now you're out talking to donors, and they're not thinking about all the building blocks and getting faculty on board to figure out opportunities. Yeah, I mean, that was, and also setting realistic expectations. The interesting thing, and I remember this distinctly from work I did with an Australian university, but this is certainly true to Esade, because it is a top international program. You get faculty members who have their own personal experience and then have taught at places with very different levels of fundraising. I remember having a discussion with a faculty member at one of my Australian clients who'd come from a university in the US. And he said, I'm asked to do things with donors and it's totally reasonable and the staff is great. And my colleagues are like, what is this terrible thing they're asking me to do? And he said, I had to tell them, no, you got to get on board.
Well, as I said, the CEO is the first believer. Then the board is really now on.
Yeah.
The pending part is engaging faculty members. We're not there yet.
Yep.
And also we have a lot of international faculty, but not so many North Americans.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So because of that,
spend time in North America can be helpful on this one.
Exactly. We are from many parts of the world, many different countries, but actually North Americans, not so many. We have even Canadians, but not, North Americans.
Not Americans.
So in that case, it's like you said, when you try to do what?
Yeah. Exactly.
The way they vision the role, it's very much like this, and then they can enlarge it into other activities, which of course are institutional related. But that part of fundraising, they think it's something some of them that they never heard it before. They're not even, they link it into disaster relief, politics, or something like that. But now, honestly, there's some what you and I decided to do in terms of that is to identify groups, ambassadors. So there's certain research groups, chairs, or some departments that they do understand, they want, and we start working with them very successfully.
Yeah,
that's probably going to get a little bit more viralized.
Yeah.
And they're really seeing that if they put some effort on it, the return is there.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Alea, I think that's just That's exactly right. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's also educating your internal partners about what part of what difference does philanthropy make? How does it fit into the financial model? Because if they haven't seen it, and that's not a part of the university's governance that they have to think a lot about. So starting with what we like to call a coalition of the willing. It's also a way to preserve your own sanity, which brings me to my next question. What's been harder than you thought it might be, and has anything been easier?
Well, I have to say that it has been a fantastic journey. And actually, I had a lot of fun, and you know that. I took this role as I'm gonna give it all, and it has been fantastic. I discovered a profession that I didn't know, and that I think I'm gonna continue my business career in. It's really interesting. I'm a scientist by early training in another life. So I discovered, before I got close to fundraising, I thought it was only art. But you told me there's so much science behind it,
Right.
numbers, and so that really caught my two parts, right? So the relationship, the thing, but also the strategy and the numbers and the KPI. So I think as a profession, I discovered there is a fantastic balance, where profession that has very hard intellectual side, but as well as a very strong relationship that at some level in your career and your life you can achieve. Harder than expected, I think the engagement with some internal stakeholders, probably faculty, not in a bad way. It's just that there's still a need of understanding and knowledge about that this is a win-win thing for everyone. And also to some of the alumni, our alumni has never been in touch with the idea that they need to give back to the school, and that is also taking longer than what I expected. That those two parts are harder. And for me personally, as myself, now it's a little bit better, but at the beginning I struggled with the no's. So like when you believe so much in something and you think it's like the course is so important and so, then the rejection side, it has been challenging, but it has been a fantastic, humble experience that just push us to really make a bigger effort to understand what is the real need that you're not achieving. And also, you also taught me that some people will never get you. There's never going to be a match, and it will just be somebody else. You know, so not everyone qualifies for what we're doing, right?
Yeah. And you're a very hard person to say no to. I know.
So, I don't know. I'm getting a lot of no's, so you never know.
And and I think that what you're talking about too with alumni, it's not just a Southern European thing. It really is a professional school thing too, right? People pay, at a top institution, top dollar for a degree towards a professional end. So it can feel a little bit
counterintuitive. I would say it's counterintuitive that you go into this top school, and then they need.
Right. Exactly. So, so we see that, I think, anywhere in the world, fundraising for a professional school can be more challenging. You have a different relationship than you do with your first alma mater. But you have such a compelling story to tell at Esade. So my last question, Olaya, if someone were to come to you and say, okay, we're going to start a fundraising program at my university, what are one or two pieces of advice that you would offer?
Okay. First, at a personal level, I will say you have to be willing to give it all. Like 24/7, at least for the first 2 years. If you're starting in a place that the program is very little, or is, on an embryonic stage, like when we talk about it, or there's no culture in the area, the region that you are, the full energy and passion it's a requirement, because the effort is tremendous. And then secondly, so first is your willingness. Secondly, a must is to get professional help. I would not have succeeded at all. It's not that I'm succeeding as I wish, as you know, but we're doing okay without professional help, because this is it's not so regulated as other, you know, if you come from academia, there are other things that are super. So I went to GNA, and for me, I still go. We have every year one project, we're developing one area or another. Get professional help to really, especially set up the lines, the KPIs, the structure, the profiles that you need, the capabilities, the way of working. It's completely a new profession that your school or your institution, you know, hasn't been familiar with. Then, as fast as you can, get the internal institutional support. So you need really key people that can, you know, spread what you're doing internally beside you. Because if it's only that area, it's an isolated effort. It needs to be viralized, disseminated, and that is still work in progress for us.
Yeah.
And a very important one that, you know, we work hard and struggle, and that I didn't think it was so crucial at the beginning, but now I do, is the resources, the human resources that you get into the team. So if it's an existing team, it might be composed by people with little experience, not so much experience, or so you really need to, in order to fulfill the goals that your board or you're gonna set up for you, if you don't have the capabilities in terms of human resources, it's a dead end. So talent in this profession, it's fantastic, and this talent comes with profiles and with training that we got from you, but also it's very important that you fight for the right amount, the right time and the right amount of resources to achieve your goals, because this is a very, we'd say, blood track, in French we say a blood track profession. So you need a lot of human hours.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, you bring up some really important points, Olaya, in order to be set up for success.
Correct.
To think about, like, okay, what are the pieces that I need personally on my team? I think that is really important. And one of the things that, you know, look, I feel like you have been successful because you have this not only energy and drive, but such a strong curiosity. And you've been really thoughtful about, okay, how do I engage all these different stakeholders? And in your CEO, you've had a partner who's been willing to invest and said, this is important. So if you can make the compelling case for why, I will consider this. And the same with the board. So I think that is, too often we see that. And again, doesn't matter where in the world you are, they think, oh, we're gonna, here's this engaging, smart, interesting, person who's been successful in other jobs. We'll give her this job and she'll just do it. And that is a recipe for frustration.
And that is our first conversation. I remember very clearly when you said to me, Olaya, I'm gonna tell you whether you've been set for success or for failure, because it's independent sometimes of the person.
Right, exactly.
How everything is structured, organized, and set up. So really important. And this is something that I never thought that it was something to either consider.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got a call from somebody I know who has not been a client actually, who is going into is being recruited to a program that here in the US, which just he already knows a lot of help. So before he signs his contract, he's actually having those conversations. And, it's, there was an article many years ago, a survey in the US of the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and it was about chief development officers who indicated they would be looking for a new job soon. And the number one reason was because there wasn't an alignment of expectations between the CEO or president, the head of philanthropy, and the board. And I mean, we talk about this all the time, right? How do we get that alignment? Because otherwise you feel like, gosh, I'm working so hard, and is it really going to matter?
Yeah.
And so if you want to retain top talent, it's really important. And so for anybody listening today who's thinking about taking on one of these challenges, really thinking it through and getting some advice from people before, I think is
I only did 50% of that equation correctly, which is before I accepted, I asked for your help in order to. I didn't ask for the human resources and the team.
Right.
But that will not happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you've definitely incorporated that lesson. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Alaya. It is so great to be with you, and I can't wait to actually be with you again soon.
Yes, COVID hasn't allowed us to be face to face as much this last year, but soon we'll
hopefully. Yeah. So I want to thank Alaya. I want to thank the GGNA team that produces this series, and all of you for joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are in the world. Again, please do send us your questions via the Q&A button on your screen or our website. I also would like to invite everybody to connect with me, with Alaya, with GGNA on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to talk to somebody at GGNA because you're facing these same kind of challenges, please reach out to us. And again, Alaya, it's so good to be with you. I hope you have a wonderful year-end break.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the audience for your time and to sharing our, successes and miseries, which maybe in a couple of years, I can come back with a different level of stories. And thank you so much, Susan, for the opportunity. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.